Welcome to Module 3, which is also Chapter 3 in your textbook, Evaluating a Company's External Environment. First, I want to just give you a reminder to sign up for the ET testing date options by Sunday, September 20th by 9 p.m. So you might want to jump over to the discussion forum that says provide two options for the ETS MBA program testing. This is an MBA program requirement that falls into the strategic capstone class, and please carefully read page 10 of the syllabus, and please feel free to email or call me if you have questions. Again, if you live in Michigan, you are expected to come to campus. There's 3 dates to choose from. And if you're out of state, Miss Diane Cairns will be working with you. It's still a proctor exam, and there's much more required with technology requirements and how you will be proctored and the specific timing of the test. So let's move into an overview of what Chapter 3 is about. So evaluating a company's external environment, Chapter 3 really begins to provide you the concepts and analytical tools for assessing your organization's external environment. And a lot of the attention centers on this competitive arena in which a company operates today. And it first looks at the pestle factors, which are political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. And then it gets down into the industry competitive environment. If you reflect back a moment on Chapter 2, Chapter 2 gave you kind of a big overview on setting the direction of the company, which involves strategic formulation, strategic execution. But everything really begins with assessing the company's present situation in its external environment, and these are things that you can't control, but you can anticipate, and the internal environment, which are things that the organization is capable of controlling. So the company includes, situation includes the competitive conditions in the industry, which is Chapter 3, which we'll be going through this week. And then next week, Chapter 4 will be the internal environment. So when you take a look at Figure 3.1 in your textbook, thinking strategically about the company situation, that's kind of a snapshot of Chapters 3 and 4, which is needed to really provide the foundation for strategic formulation. So the first big part is the macro environment that I mentioned, and you should have learned about these factors in your globalization course. And Figure 3.2 in your textbook gives descriptions of the political, economic, social, technological environment and the legal factors, and how you should begin to consider these in light of your organization's environment. And if you look at discussion board number 3, this week, or I'm sorry, it's discussion board number 4. One of the resources I like to review for looking at the macro environment is the magazine called The Economist, and I provided a website. And you can just click on the front page, and just by looking at the front page of the website of The Economist, you can see how it hits most, if not all, of these factors. So when you're assessing the organization's industry and competitive environment, Chapter 3 here provides 6 tools. One is Porter's traditional 5 forces framework. The second is the value net. Number 3 is the industry driving forces. Number 4 is how to do strategic group mapping, which again, it will be your discussion board for this week. You'll get to practice this. And then competitive analysis, and then coming up with the key success factors. So the first one is Porter's 5 force framework. And this is very classic, it's very powerful, it's widely used tool for just systematically looking at the principal competitive pressures in a market. In my MBA, I learned about competitive forces, and I believe your book cites Porter's original work, which was 1979, and again, this is very well known. So your textbook will talk about the 5-force model and the steps involved to look at the factors. So one of the first factors in the 5-force model is competitive pressures created by rivalry among competing sellers. The second factor is looking at competitive pressures associated with the threat of new entry. The third is competitive pressures from sellers of substitute products. Number 4 is the competitive pressure stemming from the supplier's bargaining power with the organization. And finally is the competitive pressure stemming from the buyer bargaining power and price sensitivity in the organization. So Porter takes quite a bit of your start of your reading here to get to understand his impact on industry assessment. The second tool available for you is the value net. And the value net comes from the perspective that not all interactions among industry participants are necessarily competitive in nature. Some have the potential to be cooperative together. So for example, in business schools, because assignment number 2 will involve looking at the strategic plan and making strategic recommendations for the College of Management, the business school. There are cooperative relationships between community colleges, bridging students to come over for the last 2 years at Lawrence Tech for their rest of their bachelor's program. So the value net can include an analysis of buyers, suppliers, and substitutes and begin to seek ways that you can complement your products and services versus head-on competition. The third tool in this textbook is the industry dynamics and the forces driving change. If you look at the industry and competitive conditions, there's a lot of change going on, and there's certain forces that are enticing and others that are putting pressure on industry participants to alter their actions, their products and services. In your chapter, you'll read about drivers of change are those that have the biggest influence on what kind of change will take place in the industry structure and competitive environment. So industry analysis for driving forces has basically 3 steps, and you have to do outside research as to what are the driving forces. So it begins with identification. Then there's assessment, whether these driving forces are driving the whole industry. Is it attractive to your organization or not attractive? And then, of course, number 3 is determining what strategic changes are needed to prepare for the impacts of anticipated change. The fourth tool described in Chapter 3 is strategic group analysis. And it's understanding which companies are strongly positioned and which are weakly positioned. It's kind of an integral part of analyzing the industry's competitive structure which your organization competes. So the best technique for revealing the market positions of industry competitors is strategic group mapping. And you will see that your discussion board question for this week on strategic group mapping, it's a technique for displaying the different markets or competitive positions based on 1 or 2 factors that your customers are looking at. So there'll be a little bit of a discussion going on about this, and you'll be definitely wanting to do strategic group mapping in both your assignment number 2 and assignment number 4 this term. And you'll also answer a question this week where you get to give your opinion on the value of strategic group mapping and if you've done this before. The fifth tool to assessing the company's industry and competitive environment is doing a competitive analysis, knowing who your competitors are and being able to explore and try to understand by doing, again, research. What do you believe are their current strategies? What are their objectives, and especially the capabilities, and what are the assumptions that you're making about your competition? Then the final tool is looking at key success factors. And key success factors are those competitive factors that most affect the industry's members' ability to prosper in the marketplace. So key success factors can be strategic elements that involve something about your product or your service attributes. Something could be operational approaches, operational excellence, a resource that you have that the competition doesn't have. So you want to be able to look at the key success factors that can bring success to your organization's performance. And you can brainstorm these, and you'll want to brainstorm these for both assignment number 2 and 4. But I want to point out, only rarely are there more than 5 key factors for future competitive success. And typically there's only 2 or 3 that truly carry the most weight. Then after you have assessed the industry and the competitive position using these tools, you want to be able to determine the industry's outlook for profitability. So this is like the final step in evaluating the industry and the competitive environment, is to use the results of these analyses that you've just performed to determine whether the industry presents the organization with strong prospects for competitive success and attractive opportunities and profits. The last thing is to be able to step away from this, and organizations are looking for people who can make recommendations based on sound research. So your next step in Module 3 is to read the chapter, use the supporting PowerPoints that I have uploaded for you, and you will see that there's a section that you can click in PowerPoint where you can add notes, and I began to add some notes and some definitions that support some of the figures and some thoughts for you there. But you can feel free to add your own notes in there. This week you'll want to answer discussion board 4 and 5 each, and if you click over to the discussion board by Wednesday, the first discussion board form is the illustration capsule 3.1. On page 69 is a group strategic map for the U.S. beer industry, and you want to be able to review this graph and answer the following 2 questions about strategic maps, and also step away from the actual illustration and let us know, how do you think mapping strategic groups can be helpful to strengthen a company's competitive advantage? The second discussion board this week is really to jumpstart us collectively on working on the strategic assessment of assignment number 2. For assignment number 2, you're going to do a mini case study, and you're going to use your learnings up through chapter 6 to be able to assess a business unit and a product and service that you're very familiar with, which is the College of Management's MBA program. And what you want to do this week is you only need to select one question from discussion board 5, and you're going to have to use some outside resources to support any 5 of these questions that you want to answer. What's really nice about this discussion board form is that as you're working in here and giving your assumptions and understandings based on outside research, that everybody can be able to use this as a platform for doing your competitive research and your industry research when it comes to business schools. So you only have to pick one of those for your discussions this week. And just remember that you want to have your initial postings done by 9 p.m. on Wednesday, and to engage in a dialogue on these postings up until Sunday night, and to respond to at least 2 threaded postings. And also you want to go back and check your discussion postings to see if anybody has asked you any further questions. So let's talk about next week's scenes. Next week's scenes begins Module 4, where we look at evaluating a company's internal environment and the importance of the companies, the resources they have, the capabilities, and the organization's overall competitiveness. The tools available to assess the organization will be: how well is the company's present strategy working? What are the company's most important resources and capabilities? What is the company's competitive advantage over rivals? What are the company's strengths and weaknesses in relation to market opportunities and threats? And this is a traditional SWOT analysis. And how does a company's value chain activities impact its cost structure and customer value proposition? And is the company competitively stronger or weaker than key rivals? And what strategic issues and problems need attention? The other reminder is next Tuesday, which will be September 26th at 7 p.m., we'll have an optional synchronous review session. These sessions are designed every few weeks, so we have time together to talk about anything that you need clarified from your readings, any questions you may have on current assignments in the class. And then, of course, we move on to our discussion board 6 and 7, and you know the drill there. Thank you.